Welcome to the H.I.T podcast, H.I.T, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we are dropping into your feed on Tuesdays with what I hope are bite-sized, digestible, well-curated conversations going on in the space of human resources, insurance, and technology. This week's episode will be no exception. This week's episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, let me get right into my guest, Clark Souers. Clark, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome, Toby. Good to be here.
Yeah, man, great to have you. So as a part of my day job, I work in the insurance consulting world. I'm out in the HR space. And our podcast was asked to be at the big CAHR event. Last year, we were the official podcast, and I met you at that event.
Yeah, I remember that vividly.
And for those of you that don't know, Clark, we were having this great conversation about emotional resiliency, which I want to pick back up where we left off. And we made it into our compilation episode, but we had to cut it short. And the reason we had to cut it short is some of the rigging from the conference literally fell almost hit you. We're diving out of the way.
Like about 5 years ago, I did a talk that went off.
Get out of the way, guys. Get out of the way. Stop. You're good, Toby. You're good.
Wow.
Who knew podcasting was a life or death endeavor?
Yes, I learned something about you and me through that experience.
Yeah.
With the stress response, it's either fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And so you, flight.
Woo, baby, I was out
You
of there.
were so fast.
I was out. There was a Toby-shaped cloud in the chair where I left
Oh
him
my
behind.
gosh, yes. It was like Olympic athlete,
That's
100-yard dash. You were gone, away, free.
Yes.
I was freeze.
Yeah.
I just sat there, just like, for some reason, I froze in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think
My producer,
your
Angelo.
producer, Angelo, like jumped in
Yeah.
and like grabbed it and saved the day.
That's amazing.
So that was crazy.
I looked back on that and I felt about people like, bro, you just left Clark. I was like, someone was screaming, watch out, get out of there. And I ran, but yes.
You did the right thing.
The funny part is we're in the middle of talking about emotional resiliency, right? We're like,
Right.
hey, listen, there's things in life that are going to be difficult and stressful. And as you talked about that. So funny backstory to us being here, but maybe let me back up and give the audience that maybe missed our harrowing event, kind of the 2 cents on sort of your career, how you got there, what you were talking about, what's going on type of a thing.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a background in human resources, so I know the insurance business super well. We're in similar spaces, and loved my career in HR. But then I got a little entrepreneurial and really just wanted to help companies and people. And I was like, how can I go about doing that? And, oftentimes when we start something from scratch, it's based on our life experience. And so I kind of came out of the womb kind of a high performer, just wanting to achieve, enjoying achievement, going full throttle in all aspects of life, even from an early age. And then really found that did have an impact on me. The amount of stress that I was under because I wanted to perform well was intense.
Yeah.
So when I started Expert Effect, it was like, hey, let's bring together a team of experts that help people become more resilient to stress. Yeah. And while we're at it, since there's so many HR needs out there, let's have a whole team of HR experts as well. Yeah,
I think that's super cool. And so you're talking about like almost internal pressure when you're talking about stress and wanting to perform. Is that specifically what you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. Like setting the bar super high for ourselves.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can probably relate. So I'm curious to hear you talk about your thoughts on that or tips, tricks, or kind of what do you mean when you dive down that rabbit hole? Like let's get down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think it can be internal, where we really do just enjoy performing well.
Right.
It feels good. There's a lot of satisfaction that comes with it, rewards, monetary rewards, all the different things that come with it, the accolades. Yeah. But when you get out of just the internal piece, a lot of times we are doing it for other people.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
We're doing it because we care about what others think.
Yeah, man.
It could be from our parents.
Yeah.
It could be from that older brother sibling that was always better at sports than us. And then oftentimes we are performing at a high level because it does give us exposure to other people, and we like the recognition, and we like people going, wow, that person's amazing what they do.
So is that a problem?
So I think it isn't a problem because of the reward piece, but it can be a problem because we are putting ourselves in a state of prolonged stress.
So there's there's health implications. If you take this philosophy or mentality into your world, there's going to be some health implications. And that's where you maybe talk about either recognition and, or I don't know, tips and tricks or.
Yeah. So the philosophy we take at Expert Effect is, one thing is a high performer could be like, you know what, I need to dial it back a notch and I won't go at such a crazy pace. I won't try to accomplish as much.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times they lose motivation. They lose that just passion that they have. And so our philosophy is, instead of trying to reduce the stress, because if they're really good at what they do, they're only going to get better at it and get rewarded, and the pressure will be more intense.
Yep.
So what if we could make the person's mind more resilient to stress? What if we could make the person's body more resilient to stress? And then they can still perform at the high levels, and the stress won't affect them as much.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if they're more resilient, they'll actually perform at even higher levels than if they just try to do performance at all costs.
And I assume you're even going down this rabbit hole because you find this is something you can dial up.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen the transformation. I've seen it in myself. I tap our stress resiliency experts all the time. And it's really amazing to just see, like, all of a sudden, the person's stress isn't affecting them as much.
Right.
It has a ripple effect into their personal life, enjoyment, happiness, the whole works.
So we're trying to say that work and life can be demanding. And if we're maybe mal-suited to deal with those demands, the way we manifest them both emotionally, personally, and physically can have consequences. But if we can go through some sort of training and conditioning to make ourselves better equipped to deal with the stress and the life and the demands and the bar even that we set on ourselves or that's externally set, we're better off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hands down. Something we've been diving into and just doing a lot of education around with companies and high performers is, in the business world, what if we looked at showing up to work the same way athletes
Totally
show up to the field?
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
I know you're a soccer coach.
Yeah, I was a soccer coach
kids.
and a soccer player. But what resonates immediately with me is, if we had an 8 a.m. training, you don't show up at 8:03 and start pouring your coffee, right? When we were there, if you had to go to the training room, you'd maybe be in 7, get taped up, get warmed up. When the coaches showed up at 7:45, 7:50 a.m., they told us, you better be lathered. Like, you guys better be moving and training and sweating already, because we need to get going at 8. And if you guys aren't warmed up, we're going to warm you up, right? And you're not going to want that. So when the stroke of 8 comes, you're ready to, like, hit the ground running, not to begin the process of getting into it, right?
Yes.
So there is an athlete approach to work and to life and to athletics that I love you talking about borrowing from, because I see it very differently in the professional world than it was in athletics.
Right. And, like, think about it. You and some of the top athletes on the team, what did you do the night before practice? Right?
Go to bed on time and hydrate.
Right?
Yeah, except for in college.
Yes. Took a little break during college.
Yeah. Well, listen, when you're 18, 19 years old, right? It's hard. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So, yeah, it's been cool, because I think a lot of times in the world of human resources and HR professionals, what we're thinking about is, how can we help our employees get good performance reviews?
Yeah.
Right? How can they get the exceptional in the performance review?
Yeah.
But they might not be showing up in a peak level of performance every day to get that.
Yeah.
So if it's instead like, what could someone do with their mind and their body to get in peak performance mode for the majority of the day?
Yeah.
And for the majority of the weeks throughout the work year.
Well, okay, so you're asking fascinating questions. Like, if I'm listening to this, I go, yeah, I totally agree. I'd love for them to show up like an athlete. Like, hit me on the how. Like, literally. Like, what are we talking about? What are some things that work?
Yeah, one of the things is awareness. You kind of alluded to that earlier. And so just taking 2 to 3 minutes when, at the beginning of the day, after someone wakes up, before they have the coffee, right? And really them getting a sense of, am I ready for this day? Am I ready for peak performance? Yeah. And so it's really going through, like, how does my body feel? Do I have inflammation somewhere, stiffness somewhere? Yeah. How's my mind? Is it like firing on all cylinders, or do I have kind of a foggy mind? Am I crazy tired? Am I in my creative genius zone? Yeah. So kind of going through, we have like an assessment that people can do where it's real structured. Yeah. But even on a non-structured basis, it's that awareness.
Yeah.
And then once we kind of gauge, how is my mind and body doing to show up today, just like an athlete?
Yep.
I'm going to compete in this big event. How am I?
Yep.
Then what can they do on a micro basis before they jump into the workday?
Okay.
So rather than going and jumping on the computer and just starting going through the slew of emails and having other people's agenda take over, is like, what can I do right now? Okay, like I'm feeling really depleted. I'm not going to be in peak performance today, so I'm going to go do a yoga session.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yes.
start an hour later.
Yeah.
Or could we even do it on a micro basis? Like, I don't have time to go do a yoga session. I can't be late to work. But you know what I could do? Is I could do 2 yoga poses.
Right.
That would really help my body get into a state of relaxation or get out of this depletion mode.
Yeah.
Or deep breathing or whatever it is. And then we found that that kind of proactive way of approaching the workday can be helpful. But then also doing a look back, because we learned so much from the past.
Yep.
So it's like, what did I do yesterday that took
I'm
me
looking
out of
around to
peak
see
performance?
my bookshelf, because there's a book I'm going to reference in a second. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But you're hitting on. So one of the books I keep is How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, and it not only chronicles life of Marcus Aurelius, but a lot of his capital S Stoic thoughts, and the daily preparation, and then the daily look back on how you did is ancient wisdom. And I mean that as a compliment to you, because I often find the most helpful tips I get from people are revisiting these thousands-year-old ideas that work, and they're around because they work, right? And so sometimes we forget good, tried and true wisdom like this. So thank you so much for touching on this.
That's cool. I've never thought about that. Roman emperors, they had to be top performers.
Oh, dude,
They had
especially in
kind of
this case. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like a CEO to the max.
Yes, yes. When it was at its height, man, and
Right.
the, Marcomannic wars are going on, and you've got, famine and disease and stuff, and you're trying to keep this institution going. Yeah, you better perform.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so we touched on a few different things, but how do we go about this like a practical level, looking at people's stress resiliency? How do we approach that?
Yeah, so there's like tons of podcasts out there,
Yeah.
as you know,
Yes.
on stress resiliency, and there's books and all these things. And I think we're always looking like, what's the best tip? What's the best tip? But we have found that people are very complex in very complex situations. So you could have a room of 100 people, and one tip is not going to fit everyone. Each person needs to do something differently to increase their stress resiliency. But there are some ways of going about it that I think are universal. So one is to just really listen to our bodies.
Yep.
And not treat our bodies like a machine and just push through.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Ultradian rhythms?
You know what? Okay, so there's a guy named Daniel Pink who most famously wrote a book called To Sell Is Human. Great author, great guy. I obviously don't have any connection to him other than read his books because he's great. He wrote another book on the science of when and how throughout the day, first of all, some people will be morning birds and night owls, and we have these kind of peaks and troughs throughout the day where we're a little more creative at some times, we're a little more analytical at other times, and learning your body, as you say, and scheduling your day to do your spreadsheeting at the right time of day for you and your creative thinking at the right time of day for you. So I'm a huge proponent for this thinking. And as you're probably about to get into, there's a ton of data backing up the science behind this.
Tons. This is a game changer if people understand this concept. I think we understand circadian rhythms pretty well, right? Need to go to bed about the same time each night, wake up the same time, get the REM, all the different things, because there are some really important stuff going on at sleep. But just as important, if not more important, are the ultradian rhythms, and that's during the day. And most people kind of have this thing where they start kind of going up into peak performance, and then they go into a trough. And then they have another peak performance and go into a trough. Some people have them 3 times a day, most people 2 times a day. And typically, it's around 10 a.m. in the morning and around 2 to 3 in the afternoon. And what we do in the world of work is push through.
Yes.
I got so much to get done.
That's right. Even though I'm cross-eyed and now I'm seeing, yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
But what our mind and body is wanting to do is to go into the trough. And the trough, if we listen to it, it's a time where we actually restore our body. Our cells will be regenerating in the middle of the day. We'll be filing all the different information, which is good for us. And so if we actually listen to that and just get out of work mode and go do something else. It could be going for a walk, relaxing, not going and do something that puts us in high stress, but something that's restorative. I'll actually sometimes go do dishes during my trough, which my wife loves.
That's right. Yeah,
it's great.
That's right. Yeah,
She's like, he's so helpful. I'm like, no, I'm just paying attention to my Ultradian rhythms.
Like, well, that's your 10 a.m. one is dishes. How about your 2 p.m.? Just a little back rub or something,
Go.
just a mindless thing. Yeah,
exactly. Oh, that's a great idea.
Well, hey, Mrs. Souers, you're welcome.
Yes, she will be very grateful every day. 2 o'clock back rub. I like it. It's good because she's. I can do that in the work environment. Other work environments, I can't just go people give back rubs.
We'll put some disclaimer language or something.
Yes.
No, just teasing. Well, yeah, no, it's interesting because even if like you do something, as you mentioned, hey, I don't know what my day can or can't facilitate, right? You talked about a yoga class earlier and then broke it down to like maybe just a couple poses, right? Because borrowing the idea, even if it's a bite-sized version of it, can be helpful. And so sometimes, when I've learned this stuff about the Ultradian rhythms and my day, I try to find afternoon meetings that I can take walking. So I don't need to be in front of the computer. It's just I'm listening in, I'm giving advice that I can do off the top of my head. So that meeting, that one happens out in the sunlight, going for a little walk and kind of, as you said, resetting so that when I show back up at 3 or 4 to look at a spreadsheet, my eyes aren't as glazed over as they used to be before I listened to my body in that way.
Yes, so true. And it's amazing. Like we recoup that investment of time. Yeah. The trough is usually 20 minutes. Yeah. So it's not the California, rest break rule of 10 minutes. Yeah. It's actually should be 20 minutes. Yeah. So hourly staff, maybe they're not going to get this 20-minute break. But salary.
But you can fold a sort of a break into your work to the extent possible, right? Obviously, if you can't, you can't. But if, like we said, you can take this meeting up and down walking, and you're still working. I mean, I'm listening and I'm giving advice, but I'm doing it in a different manner that at least acknowledges, as you said, these things are real. Yes. We've got times of the day where we're better or worse at stuff, and we can just pedal the metal and push through it. But as you mentioned, when you get this investment of time back, I think what you're alluding to is when you're trying to push through this kind of sagging trough, your efficacy is going to be so much lower that it borrows from, I think Lincoln said, right? If I had 60 minutes to cut a log, I'm going to spend the first half hour sharpening the axe. Yes. Right? It feels like you're not doing any work, but you are. And then the back end is so much more efficient.
Oh, it is. Yep. And you're more creative and get more done and you enjoy it more. It's all around a win.
Well, speaking of creative and enjoying, you are super creative, and I enjoyed the heck out of this conversation, and I appreciate you coming on, and I'm grateful to get you in and out in one piece as opposed to last time. So that's all the time we have for you this week on the podcast. Thank you so much to our sponsors, True Hue. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.